Today on Listen Up, the Asia tsunami and earthquake 1 year later. We take a look back and a look ahead. Hello and welcome to Listen Up. I'm Lorna Duick. It was a beautiful sunny day in several Asian countries, including Indonesia, Sri Lanka, southern India, Thailand, and the Maldives, when on December 26, 2004, one of the strongest earthquakes on record rocked the coastal areas, and the rest of the world began to witness the aftermath in disbelief and shock. At first, the scope of the disaster was not known. But a year later, the UN reports more than 200,000 people have died or are still missing. 1.8 million people have been displaced. Over 500,000 homes have been severely damaged or destroyed. Canadians and North Americans alike responded with record giving. The Canadian Red Cross reported $138 million. Oxfam Canada says more than $7 million was donated, and UNICEF Canada more than $15 million. I remember calling everyone back early from Christmas vacation when the tsunami struck, thinking, is our world collapsing? Now here's a look back at what we found when we hit the ground shortly after Boxing Day.
On Christmas Day, when I called to wish him, he said, I'm taking the whole family to the beach.
Through frantic waiting and phone calls, Shareshmi eventually found out her brother had been stopped from getting to his beach vacation. Eamol's family barely survived when their house was destroyed.
They somehow or other managed to pull out my sister-in-law from the house. The waves have just come crashing in, and he had nowhere to run, so he had climbed the tree in front of the house.
But too often, prayers for safety became prayers of mourning. While helping find missing relatives for thousands of Sri Lankan Canadians, staff at this radio station learned their own family members had died in the tsunami.
I keep asking, where are you? Why did you do this? I keep asking to God. I mean, when I heard this, I asked, where is God? Why did he do that?
Regardless of walk of life or culture, prayer is everywhere.
Just wondering, that's like, why does it have to happen to, anybody? This world's just been, very destructive lately.
Hard questions about God, even in the highest of places. Mr. Prime Minister, we know you are a spiritual man. The world has been humbled by this crisis and the power of nature. What do you pray at a crisis like this?
Well, obviously the question that you inevitably ask yourself is why? And then what does it mean? What can you do about it? And it is, you're obviously you immediately think about what we as human beings can do to make sure that it doesn't happen again, what we as human beings can do to make sure that those who've been hit and touched are helped. And that is part of, obviously, one's religion, the ability to deal with other people who are suffering through tragedy and make it part of your own. But you also ask the reason behind it, and you don't find the answer there.
Prime Minister isn't alone in feeling his Christian faith has no answer for the question of why. Other religions face the same dilemma.
You watch the women, how they try to protect their children. Where is a God? I'm sure it's there somewhere, but those people are not getting any help. Why? That's the question comes, why?
I just can't quite get my head around. I can't fathom what people are going through on a day-to-day basis when, I imagine having a child ripped out of your arms and swept out to sea. I just don't know how you deal with that and how to respond to that. And so that's my prayer.
What did you ask God when you saw this unfolding?
what has happened has a purpose. In my personal belief, I think everything has a purpose, and the purpose is decided by the divine spirit. If you take this whole disaster in the perspective of the universe, time and space have no meaning. What is more important is it has happened. The least we can do is pray for the people who have died in this unfortunate disaster and pray for the survivors so that they can build up their strength. We can empower them to rebuild and reconstruct their lives and go on.
Doctor, who do you pray to then?
I pray to the Almighty God and the creator of this whole universe.
And how would you define that? Is that a Hindu God, a Christian God, a Muslim God?
Well, is there a difference? There is only one God. We have different paths to reach to the same God. Whether it's a Hindu God or a Muslim God, there is only one God. And I pray to the Almighty Creator rather than to pray to Allah or to Bhagwan or to God or Jehovah.
It is said that God knows all that happens in human history. And I would say that includes the cries of humanity. It's very difficult to say what God does and doesn't do, but I believe God is attuned to this cry that he hears, collective cry from humanity. The question about where God is, I think, has behind it the desire for an explanation. And I really think that explanation is not the issue here. I mean, God is where God has always been. And I know that doesn't really answer the question, but what we really need to look at here is not the event itself and ask where God was in the event, but where is God in terms of the response?
When we come back, as part of World Vision's rapid response team, Steve Matthews has guided World Vision's media expeditions all over the globe. He joins me in studio.
Banda Aceh, Indonesia, ground zero for the tsunami. Communities along the coast were sheared off at their foundations. The destruction defied description. For weeks, survivors wore surgical masks to cover the stench of death. Mass graves were grim and muddy reminders of the horrible death toll. People called it the City of Ghosts. Today, Banda Aceh is a city in recovery. The sounds of construction can be heard from all directions. The waterways, once clogged with debris and smashed fishing boats, are open and alive. The mass graves are closed. Flowers grow there now, and memorial markers are planned. But there is so much more to do.
Yeah, here. This is my bedroom.
Surifa lost a 9-year-old grandson and the husband she had loved since college on that awful day. The home they shared was obliterated by the tsunami. Surifa will never forget the wall of water that smashed through her bedroom window.
So I can see the water like this, here. Oh, my husband asked me, what is that, Fa? Yeah, that's the water. I said, we die. I said, we will die. I said.
There is no remembering without tears.
Please help me, God. Please help me.
Surifa floated in the water unconscious, waking up in a village nearly 3 kilometers away.
Yeah.
Today, she lives in one of World Vision's transitional living centers, within view of her old home site.
I am so happy because I came back to my village, you know. Now I can stay with my friend, my villager. Thank you very much for your help. I'm very happy today.
World Vision's transitional living centers house more than 4,000 people.
I'm very comfortable.
Well, welcome back to this special edition on the one-year anniversary of rebuilding in Southeast Asia. Joining me in studio to guide us through is World Vision's Canada Rapid Response Team Director, Steve Matthews. And Steve, I remember being in World Vision right when this happened a year ago. Your phones were going crazy. Over $100 million has now left World Vision to help in Southeast Asia. But you were actually World Vision's first person on the ground.
Yeah.
Take us back to your memories, what that was like.
Well, it was Boxing Day, and in the morning I checked my email, and there was something about an earthquake and a tsunami, and at first it wasn't really clear how big it was, but we kept tracking it, and by about 11 o'clock that morning, it was clear that something very big was up, and so I was in contact with my colleagues around the world, trying to get more information, and by 6 o'clock that night, I was on an airplane. And I didn't know which country I was going to because there were 12 countries affected by the tsunami. So the plan was get to Bangkok, Thailand, and we'll make a decision from there where you go. So as soon as I hit the ground in Bangkok, 18 hours later, I was told to go to Sri Lanka. But first, I got my first taste of what had happened because the airport in Bangkok was filled with people who were injured, who were scarred, who were bruised, in wheelchairs. It looked like a hospital triage as opposed to a departure lounge of an airport. People, and I remember it being very surreal.
From the airport, where do you go?
From the airport, I went directly from Thailand straight to Colombo, Sri Lanka. So I was on the ground within 48 hours of the emergency. And the first thing we did as soon as we got to Sri Lanka was headed south into the worst hit areas and started delivering aid with the World Vision group in Sri Lanka that had already started within hours of the emergency starting.
Okay, and your memories from seeing that, right? There's the families, there's the people whose homes are gone, whose loved ones are gone.
Yeah, I don't think that I could find words to describe it because you would drive for miles and miles and miles and see this pulverized concrete and steel and everything, the force of nature and what it had done. I've seen many emergencies in my life, but nothing like this. And then perhaps where it really hit home is when we got to Galle, which is the southern port city, a beautiful city in southern Sri Lanka. And there, next to the famous cricket ground, because there are big cricket players in Sri Lanka, was a field filled with bodies. And World Vision doctors were already at work. They had been working 48 hours straight. They were identifying bodies, and they were disposing of bodies in tractors into mass graves because they had to get them in the ground quickly. That moment had a lot of impact.
What happened for trauma recovery? I know the people we interviewed last year, a Canadian team of students overwhelmed putting bodies in bags. How has that recovery gone of the local people living with that type of Holocaust?
Well, I'm not an expert in psychology, but I've been around enough people to know that when it comes to humanitarian aid, one thing that we bring that's intangible is hope. It's not just about bringing things to people or rebuilding things for them. It's giving them hope for the future. 1 year later, the children are smiling again.
One of World Vision's emphasis has been, I think, over 100 child-friendly places, 172 of these child-friendly spaces. Because we heard a lot of people, how do you help recover a child from the trauma of seeing mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, home, gone? What have these child-friendly spaces done for the kids?
Well, first, I think we all know that when something devastating happens, you never do totally get over it. It's always a part of you, and you learn how to manage it as time goes on. World Vision assists in that process, and one of the main components of all of our emergency programs is what we call child-friendly spaces. So that means from the outset of the emergency and for months afterwards, we have a place where children can go where they are safe. They're away from all of the debris that's been destroyed. They're away from any predators that may have arrived on the scene. And they have a place to congregate and even learn, because often the schools are destroyed too.
All
so
right.
they become very popular.
Okay, when we come back, we're going to look at some of that very concrete rebuilding. $147 million rebuilding schools, rebuilding homes, after this.
With a death toll of some 40,000 people in the tsunami, southeastern India, like the Aceh region, is struggling back to its feet. The fishing industry is this area's lifeblood, but getting back on the sea that wreaked so much havoc is no easy task.
First and foremost thing that has affected most of the fishermen is a mental trauma and fear.
Vel Anand lost his beloved nephew, a 21-year-old engineering student, in the tsunami. But his 3 children survived, and Vel has battled his fear to return to his life as a fisherman. With World Vision's help, Vel is part owner of a new vessel and can once again provide for his family.
World Vision has helped not even my family, but also the families around this place. Since tsunami, they have been with us for every other aspect of the relief, and they have given us boats, they've given us nets and other relief items like provisions. World Vision has helped us a lot.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Vel's 9-year-old son, Ajit, loves to work on his abacus.
50, 500, 5,000.
Ajit attends World Vision's special math class, supplementing his regular schooling and boosting his life skills. World Vision has offered a variety of educational support, toys, daycare and art therapy for children. More than 5,000 new permanent homes are planned for tsunami-stricken areas. Hundreds of World Vision grants have allowed women like Vasanti to open new businesses, and soon she'll have a new house as well. And hundreds more fishing families have been re-equipped with boats and nets. Others received bicycles to help them sell, prosper and recover. Vel says it is more than a shattered boat that is repaired when this aid is extended. Shattered lives can begin to heal as well.
Listen Up is back looking at the tsunami 1 year later, and with us is Steve Matthews, who's been on the ground twice since that for an extended period of time. And Steve, schools, big deal about how will children regather a bit of normalcy. A lot of teachers died in that. What's being done for the school crisis?
Well, so far World Vision has managed to build 30 schools in the 4 primary countries that we're working in, and we do have more planned. So in combination with the rebuilt schools and the child-friendly spaces, there is space for children to learn once again. And a big part of the recovery process is to find some normalcy in life. School is a part of that.
Okay, over 500,000 families lost their house completely, 1.8 million displaced. Let's talk about houses, about rebuilding. These actually look pretty North American, some of these homes. Tell me the plan here for rebuilding.
It's the biggest challenge of the whole project, and that is rebuilding permanent housing for these people. And you have to imagine here in our culture, functional culture, how difficult it is to build a home. Imagine trying to build hundreds of homes in a culture that has been hammered by the tsunami, where part of the workforce is missing, supplies are not easy to come by. Some of the land has actually been lost. People lost their papers and deeds. I mean, it's a nightmare logistically. But we have pressed ahead, and in the first year, World Vision has managed to build just over 1,000 permanent homes with a plan to build close to 14,000 in the coming years. But it's a lot of work.
Wow, I never thought about that idea of just the land titles, the who owns this, and the squabbles that could happen over that,
Well,
loss.
the other huge complication is the governments in all of the countries said because of the tsunami you can't build next to the ocean. So there have been arguments about how close you can build to the water, and most recently they changed some of the restrict regulations in Sri Lanka. They're now allowing them to be 50 meters from the water, but originally it was 200 meters.
So fishing is back, that part of, and the restoring of that whole part of the economy. Farming is likely gone for years, is that right, along the coastal regions?
In some of the coastal areas that were traditional for farming, because of the salt water, it has tainted the land, and it will have to come back naturally over a period of decades. As for the fishing part, that's one of World Vision's biggest projects too. We've helped just over 13,000 families with boats, nets, and fishing equipment. So they're getting back to their livelihoods and once again getting that normalcy in life is a part of the recovery.
And the construction, those are local families that you're using to rebuild the houses, the apartment blocks, all
Sure,
that kind of thing.
yeah,
It's all
yeah.
local. You know, we can't let you go without mentioning the other disaster that you have been to, because here as we look back a year later, first of all, there was so much attraction to the tsunami because of the tourism issue. Should we still be funneling efforts into rebuilding tourism there?
Well, I don't think that the aid effort is rebuilding tourism,
Right.
so to speak.
But people are going to go on vacations anyway. Should they go to the tsunami region?
Absolutely. Some of the most beautiful land in the world. I've been to both southern Thailand and Sri Lanka, and I've been to many countries.
You've been to 80 countries, Steve.
80 countries.
And you think Sri Lanka is it?
Sri Lanka is absolutely gorgeous.
Okay, so tourism it's a great way you can give back to the crisis. That will never happen in Pakistan. You've been there. The ability to access it's not a nice coastline that is easy to figure out the logistics of it. Tell me, do some comparison thinking what you must wrestle with as you go Pakistan and the crisis of a cold winter for the hundreds of thousands of homeless.
My heart breaks for the people of Pakistan because of what has happened there. It is a tsunami-sized disaster, the earthquake that took place. The primary difference is in Sri Lanka, Indonesia, etc., we had the luxury of warm weather while people were homeless. We don't have that luxury in Pakistan. In this cold winter in Pakistan, people will die because not enough help has gotten to them.
It's very sobering, and it's a hard story to cover journalistically because of access, and I'm sure aid-wise, the logistics are so difficult.
Yeah, mountain roads, a lot of them had been buried, and rock slides, and logistically, the tsunami was difficult. Logistically, the Pakistan earthquake is a nightmare.
And the amount of dollars given is staggering, the difference. There was great generosity and outpouring for the tsunami. What are you concluding about our lack of giving to Pakistan?
Well, I'm not trying to be critical at all, and I don't think anybody is, because we all understand it's been just a horrendous year, and people have dug deep, especially Christians, as they always do, to help. But at some point, you almost hit the threshold, and so it is understandable to a degree that Pakistan did not get as much attention. But I will say that it deserves attention, and if anybody can help out, they really should.
Okay. Steve Matthews, thank you very much.
Thanks, Lorna.
Well, they could call this a bestseller, but it's free. It's Our Daily Bread, one of North America's most popular spiritual resources for the questions that affect your lives. Available for you at keypromises.org, no cost or obligation. Order your copy today. Well, as I conclude on some thoughts about what it is like to look back a year later after one of the worst disasters and wonder how now will Pakistan be taken care of, or whatever the next epic disaster may be that faces our lives, it's unavoidable that because of television, because of the community of technology we live in, we are all neighbors, and it does matter what we do. We'll close today with one of my favorites from last year's Tsunami show, and that was a very sensitive prayer put together by our producer and director. This prayer fits all the challenges of the last year. The tsunami victims still recovering, the Hurricane Katrina, the awful earthquake in Pakistan and regions beyond. These thoughts for whatever challenges our world is facing.
We are assaulted, awash in destruction and pain, in the presence of death all around. Parents bury their children, and children parents. Root of life, creator, renewer and sustainer of all things, you who make us, you who know us, in your mercy, hear our prayer. For those who suffered the violence of the earth and sea, for those who still wait for news, for those who grieve, needing comfort, though none can be enough, for hearts and lives beyond repair, needing the will and the strength to go on. For all these, we seek a sign of your grace. O God, you who do not abandon or forsake. Strengthen medical and community workers who struggle in the face of unspeakable anguish. Sustain aid workers during long hours and difficult decisions. Rebuild livelihoods swept away. The fishermen, the traders, the farmers, the hoteliers. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Most persistent God, pull us into your will. Thank you for small and large actions and sacrifices. Thank you for the generosity of the world and the hope it creates for us all. For all who call on the Lord, by whatever name they know, answer, we pray. Answer, we pray. In your deep mercy, hear our prayer.